my number one thing that I would like to accomplish for you guys tonight is to be useful to you. So I am going to do lots of just real practical, run through the meds, and then have hopefully some time for you guys to ask me whatever questions you have. I think that I would start with how to approach parents about the situation. And as we've already heard, the stimulant medicines are the tried and true medications. They've been used for 5 decades. The Journal of Pediatrics came out several years ago with a study that looked at what is the best studied class of medications that are used in pediatrics. Stimulants won by a long shot. So we know what they do. Good, bad, indifferent, we can predict. Here's the good stuff, here's the potential bad stuff. There is a high correlation between ADHD and substance abuse. Studies that look at what happens when we treat with stimulants, because this is one of the major concerns of parents. Are we going to make these children into drug abusers? And the studies actually show that treating the ADHD decreases the risk of substance abuse. We've already heard about the dangers of driving with ADHD, especially untreated ADHD. And so all the way around, treating the disorder is going to give them better executive function, better impulse control, better working memory, more of a possibility of staying on task and thinking things through before they do them. So if they're with a group of friends and a party breaks out and they say, hey guys, it'd be great, come on, have some of this. All right, let's go driving. Our ADHD kids are not likely to think, what will happen if I do this? Because if you quiz them later or even before, well, tell me what you would decide about this. What kind of impact would that have? What are the possible bad outcomes? They could probably tell you. But in the moment, they're going with it. So treating them is of extreme helpfulness to them. All right, so what do I tell parents? Because parents will come in and they're afraid to put their kids on meds. I don't want to put them on drugs. I don't want to put them on drugs. What are we going to do? I'm so scared of this. So one of the things that I always tell them is that this is just a trial. It is not as momentous as you think. This medicine is in and out of their system every day. We get a hold of a side effect that you can't live with, just don't give it to them. We're done. And they go, oh. I said, we will either like this for you and your child, or we won't. And if we don't, then we'll stop, back up, and consider something else. That sometimes takes the pressure off, It's like, oh, well, no, I'm not signing them up for a lifetime of this, although probably they are, because probably they will see the benefit and go on with it. The other thing that I do is almost all of the children in my practice take their medicine 7 days a week. I would like to say that ADHD only affects school, but let's be real. And the thing that I tell the parents is, okay, so how do you think it's impacting your child if all day on Saturday and Sunday and vacations and summer vacations, you are chasing them around? Don't, I told you, stop, you did it again, put that down. What is that doing to that relationship? What kind of a summer is the child having? So now let's say the child goes to play with friends. And all of a sudden, they're making up new rules. They don't want to go by the rules. They're dominating everything that's going on, and their friends don't want to be around them. What is that doing to them socially? Let's say that they have, or they are, a little brother. What is that doing to their sister? What is it doing to the relationship between the two? We need to be able to stop and think and control ourselves. That frontal lobe, the frontal cortex, is the CEO of your life. So if you think about everything that a chief executive officer does at a large company, that's the part of the brain that does it. So we're saying, go and play and have a large time without being able to think. Just whatever pops in your mind, do that. It'd be awesome. That's not awesome. So those are some of the things I tell them. The other thing I tell them when I'm getting down to which medicine are we going to use is I will predict what dose we're going to use on the front end. So with the methylphenidates as a general guideline, I'm looking at 1 to 2 milligrams per kilogram per day. With the amphetamine salts, I'm looking at 0.5 to 1 milligram per kilogram per day. So let's say I've got a kid and I'm starting them on Concerta and they weigh 120 pounds. And I'm thinking to myself, chances are great we're going to end up at 72 milligrams. Maybe not. Maybe 54 will be fine. Who knows? Maybe it's even a strange child that 18 is going to do it. I'll say, well, this is where we're going to start. We're going to make sure your child tolerates this, and then we're going to slowly work our way up until we find the dose that works well for you and for your child. One of the chief concerns of parents, besides the substance abuse and what am I doing to them, and it's not natural. I love that one. It's not organic. Anyway, I don't need to get off on that tangent. So at any rate, what I will do in predicting to them is then that normalizes it. So then when they come back and I go, 18, I don't tolerate it well, but I don't really think it's doing much. Let's go up to 36. They don't freak out and go, oh no, not 36 milligrams, because I've already told them the chances are great that we're going to end up at 54 or maybe even 72. So then I've got them going with me and not freaking out. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I just want them on the least amount of medicine possible. And I said, well, basically I'm with you on that. I certainly don't want them to have side effects. But I said, why would we bother to give them medicine at all if really it isn't helping much? What would be the point in that? We're exposing them to side effects and everything you're afraid of, and we're still not treating what we were trying to treat. I said, let's just go ahead and treat it and then see what we think. All right, so that's a general overview. I wanted to give you just mention a few things on this handout. There's nothing very technical about it. I've gone over the dosage. Focalin and Strattera, which are methylphenidates, are dosed at 0.5 to 1 milligram per kilogram per day. So that one's a little bit different. I always use long-acting medicine. Every once in a while I don't, but mostly I do. Have you ever been to a school where they were handing out meds? It's horrifying. Some of them have nurses, and even under those circumstances, it's a little bit scary. But lots of times, it's a desk drawer, and the secretary pulls it out and says, which one is yours? Okay? We want our kids on long-acting medication so they're not taking a dose at school. And furthermore, if we can avoid a dose in the afternoon, which you can't always, it gets back to the parent probably has ADHD. All right, so you're saying, I want this child to have medicine at 3 o'clock. What are the odds that's going to happen? They're not good. If I can make it where they can remember once a day, take the medicine with the breakfast, the odds of that being successful go way up. Okay. Strattera is a patch, so that's a little different. It's had a lot of problems. I'll mention that right quick. You have to hold pressure on the patch for 30 seconds. To apply that pressure is what makes it stick. You're supposed to rotate it every day from the left to the right hip. No one remembers that. It's not going to happen. So what I tell parents is, if you're thinking, is it the left one or the right one, and the left one is a little pink, put it on the right one. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter, because that's the only reason you do it if there's going to be sensitivity. That patch you leave on for 9 hours and take off to give you a coverage of 12 to 13 hours. But when you take it off at 9, it's not like the medicine is all gone. So if you need coverage more like 16, you just leave that patch on. It's supposed to last a couple to 3 hours after you take it off. So for some patients, that ends up being a really good fit. Okay, Folklin. And Concerta. All right, so Concerta. I love Concerta. I generally start with a methylphenidate because in my experience, not the studies, so I don't know why I have all the weird kids in my practice, but in general, I find it's tolerated a little bit better. Less of a side effect load. So in general, I'm going to start there, all things being even. And Concerta is one I really like. Now, Concerta went generic, and there is one approved generic. And all the others are not really Concerta, because what makes Concerta Concerta is the delivery system. That's the only reason that makes it any different than any other methylphenidate. It's an Oros delivery system. The fake generic Concerta is not an Oros delivery system. So they get the bulk of it, immediate release, and very little through the rest of the day. So if I have a prescription plan that is not going to allow the approved generic, which is fine, it's Oros, it's Activus or Watson, if they're not going to allow that, I don't choose that one. I'm not interested in the methylphenidate extended release, which is not an Oros delivery. So I don't do that. Folklin for ticks. Folklin does not treat ticks. So that's a little poorly worded. If I have a kid with a tick disorder and they need a stimulant, if they haven't been on Folklin, I'm about to put them on it. Because I have a lot of kids in my practice who have had many fewer ticks with Folklin than any other stimulant. So that's there's not research to support that. I'm just telling you what I see. It is dexmethylphenidate, so it's just the D isomer, and somehow taking the L out of it seems to have a more positive impact on ticks. So that's something I do in my practice. Okay, the amphetamine salts, I mentioned that they're dosed at 1/2 to 1 mg per kg per day. Again, I'm going long-acting. I'll say a little bit about Adhd, ODT. It's orally disintegrating. And it is the bioequivalent of Adderall XR, but it tends to last a little longer and be a little smoother. The other thing, and I don't know for you in practice, but I find that I spend lots more time trying to figure out a way for my patients to afford their medication than I ever did before. And so I'm sitting there with my GoodRx app and my various and sundry cards and collections from the pharmaceutical companies, and trying to figure out how they're going to afford their medicine. As you guys know, Cigna with the carpet mills has a huge deductible that is tied to their prescription plan. So if it's not cheap for the mill workers, they're not going to buy it. It's not going to happen. Okay, so back to Adhd. Their coupon is such that it is cheap, and then the rest of the cost of the medicine goes towards their deductible. And there are a few that are like that. So they can get it for $15, $20, which is going to be cheaper than generic Adderall XR. It can go towards meeting their deductible, and they're not out of pocket a lot. Same deal with Evicchio, which is a newer amphetamine salt, which is immediate release, but it's a pretty long-acting immediate release. So you're going to get 6, sometimes maybe even 7 hours out of it. It is an equal mixture between D and L amphetamine salt, dextroamphetamine. So the thing that they're seeing with that one is that the side effect profile seems to be a little bit better. So those kids that are emotional and not eating and all of those kinds of things, I've had several kids in my practice so far where they actually are not having as big of problems with side effects with the Evicchio. So that's another thing to consider with that one, and another one that chews up the deductible for the family because they pay the rest towards the deductible. I use GoodRx, and I left some cards out at the desk. I don't know if the medical practices are aware of that. It is an app or a website where you can go and plug in whatever medication a family's taking, and it will tell you some important things. One, where in town it's cheapest, and it varies from pharmacy to pharmacy. I have some patients with the high deductibles that don't even run it through their insurance. They just pay through GoodRx. The other thing GoodRx does is if there are any manufacturer's coupons available, click on that button and it pops up. So they don't have to go through and call in the office, I need a card, have you got a card, talk to the drug rep, just go to GoodRx, click on it, pop it up, show it to the pharmacist. So it's a pretty good one. Now I have had some people complain that if you log in all your personal information from GoodRx, that they will blow up your email. I've never done that, so I've never had that experience. I just go in there, click, 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 what do we need? And I show it to my patients, because no pill in a pill bottle ever did anybody any good. So if they're not leaving with a prescription that they're about to get filled and give to their kid, you've lost. All right, so let's move to the non-stimulants, which I use. Stimulants on our first line. It's set for certain populations where I will go more non-stimulant. The first non-stimulant to talk about is Strattera. If I have an anxious ADHD child or adult, I'm going to think about Strattera. The scoop with Strattera, good news on it, it's going to cover more like 24 hours. You can combine it with a stimulant if you need to. It is probably a little less helpful with hyperactivity. It's pretty good with attention, impulse control. You start with a low dose and work your way up. I usually dose it at night with food. Most common side effects, especially in kids, GI distress, nausea, and sleepiness. So I give it to them at night. And most of the time that works fine for coverage. Every once in a while after they get past that, I'll switch it to morning. So you're going to start low to avoid all of the really serious throwing up, because they're not going to keep taking it if they're really throwing up. But that means that you're going to be 2 months getting it to where it's working and you got a therapeutic dose. I do sometimes start a stimulant because there's a fire in the house. SOS, help, 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 call 911. So I'll start the stimulant and I'll say, your child really needs Strattera. We're going to get them through these last 3 months of school, and then I'm going to see you again this summer, and we're going to see about getting them switched over if at all possible. Sometimes I have the luxury of going ahead and doing it, but not always. Okay, and the other thing about the Strattera, when it first came out, they talked it up like it was the best thing since sliced bread, which it isn't. It's not that powerful. It's good, but it's not that great. And they underdosed it. Lilly has safety data on dosing Strattera up to 1.8 milligrams per kilogram per day. So until I meet that dose, the child has not failed Strattera. So I push it on that. Intuitive and Capve, these are more likely to help with hyperactivity and some with impulsivity, not so much with attention. Consider if you've got a tic disorder, because it can help with the tic disorders, and the stimulants can aggravate that. Sleepiness generally decreases over time. However, I will tell you, if you've got a really hyperactive kid, you give them either the extended release or the immediate release, and you make them real sleepy, the parents may come back and say, he is mean, because he is sleepy and he doesn't want to sleep. And I mean bad mean. I've had a kid bad mean. If I can figure out a way to reduce the sleepiness, they're not mean. The medicine doesn't make them mean. It's the sleepiness that makes them mean. So you got to kind of watch that with those. Nuvigil, Provigil. Provigil was actually, modafinil, was well on its way to being approved to treat ADHD in kids. And in one of their last trials, one patient got Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and the FDA wanted them to go back and do very expensive further testing and research before they would approve it, and the company said, not worth it. I use it every once in a while, not often, but it is a possibility if you're working through, I've done this, this, and this. Wellbutrin, I use that when I have depression and ADHD. Sometimes I can use it alone if I push the dose. Lots of times I use it with a stimulant, but it is good at helping with focus and attention, and it does treat depression. And then I've listed there Viarin is a medical food. You take 2 each day. It's a lipid supplement. Because it is a medical food, there's not a prescription plan that's going to cover it, so it's out of pocket. There are studies, I mean, it has been approved for treatment of ADHD. The effect size is very small. So I have 2 kids in my practice on it, and it's probably more to satisfy their parents than to do much for them, quite honestly. But I'm still working on the parents. So one actually has a really hard time with stimulants and everything else I've tried for him. So I kind of get that with the other one. We're working on it. And then side effect management, I'll run through it. Insomnia, I've written shorter or longer acting stimulant. It's Russell Barkley has actually looked at this a little bit. You need to get organized to fall asleep. It's strange to say that, but you need to click off your day. Yes, 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 done. Shut down your systems, start breathing deeper to go to sleep. Kids with ADHD all amped up, sometimes actually having a little bit of stimulant in their system at bedtime can be helpful. Now, other times you got too much stimulant in their bedtime, they won't go to sleep. So it's a balancing act, but think about that when you're running across that issue. Do I need to go one way or the other? I use melatonin. You guys got a handout on manufacturers who've been tested by a consumer lab group, so I know that they have what they say they have and they don't have any impurities in them. So I do use that. I'll use clonidine, trazodone, doxepin, periactin. That I'll mention also with the weight loss. Periactin is an antihistamine that increases appetite and makes you a little sleepy. So if I got somebody with a little seasonal allergy and they're not eating well and they're having a hard time with sleep, periactin is something I would think about using. Weight loss is not uncommon to begin treatment. So in the first month, even 2 months, if I've got a little weight loss, I'm not freaking out. If it's continuing on into the 3rd and the 4th month and they're still dropping weight, then we've got a problem. One of the things that I find is I'll say, okay, be sure and either take it with your breakfast or after you eat your breakfast. Lots and lots and lots of kids eat breakfast at school. So they take their medicine at home, they get on a 30-minute bus ride, they eat their breakfast, and then they're not hungry because the medicine is kicked in. So I go, okay, how hard would it be, a granola bar, a Carnation Instant Breakfast is one I really like to use. It's cheap. It has good nutritional content in it. You say, here, would you like a chocolate shake? For breakfast? For breakfast. They can grab and go. It's something that you can get some good calories in them, some good nutrition in them as they're headed out the door before their appetite is wiped out. I tell folks that lots of times people don't eat as much lunch, but generally they will eat twice when it comes to supper. So they'll eat supper and then a bedtime snack. Bedtime snack can also be used as a strategy to avoid going to bed. So I always tell the parents, if we've got a weight loss situation, I said, here's what you do. Before it's time to brush the teeth, you say, all right, Billy, come here. It is time for your bedtime snack. Now, if they object and don't eat it, too bad, so sad. The parents don't need to play that game. Sorry, you had your opportunity. We'll see you in the morning. But if you plan it like that, then you can get a few more calories in them if you need to. So those are the ways I handle the weight loss if that's an issue. Moodiness, the smoother the delivery, the better. So you don't want them being up here and going, because that's when the moodiness is going to happen, is when you have that quick decline in the drug level of the stimulant, this blood level of the stimulant. anytime you've got a bad problem with side effects or ineffectiveness, you should try the other class of stimulant medicine, because it may be a much better fit than the one that you're first on. And sometimes the moodiness will help. It'll help a lot switching from one class to the other. Switch to a non-stimulant, train the child and the parent on how to deal with afternoon irritability. So when it comes down to it and I can't make it go away and they really need the medicine, then I say, okay, so what time does this start? And it's a strategy, just like you're using with the timeout. And you're saying, okay, so from 4 to 4:35, your child is just cranky, right? Okay, so what can we do? I don't think this is a great time to tell them they have to do their chore. How's that going to work out for you guys? Let's give them some quiet downtime for that time period. Or they can shoot hoops, or they can do this or that. Let's plan it so that they're not having to interact with a bunch of people when they're feeling irritable. And then when it's over, get on with the rest of the day. Sometimes they can make that happen. Other times, we live crazy lives and that doesn't happen. All right. Headache, nausea, stomachache generally go away. And then E, tolerance, extended release doesn't last, or this medicine worked great for 2 months and now it doesn't work. There are some kids that develop tolerance to the medicine and you reach a limit where you can't keep going up. When I start hearing extended release is not lasting, so it's supposed to last 10, 12 hours, you're getting 4. Okay, that's not good. You've pushed the dose up, you're maybe at 5. That's when those are the kids I do immediate release of. The other thing I'll tell you that you can do sometimes I'll end up with 2 medicines that work for a kid. And we will ride one until they come in and go, teacher said he's not paying attention anymore. Doesn't seem like it's working. I said, all right, time for drug number B. And so we switched to B. And we do that for as long as it lasts. Now, this is an unusual set of circumstances, but I do see it. So it is important to say to the parent, well, it works great for a while. We are going to switch it because it's not working now. But we may come back to it. And so then they haven't said, oh, this one never works. The blanket statements, never again statements. Okay. All right. I'm going to be quiet. Flew through all of that. Russell Barkley does have an excellent book for parents called Taking Charge of ADHD. So for the parent who doesn't have ADHD, they might want to read it. The one that does have ADHD, probably not. That's how I ended up getting a lot of adult patients with ADHD. Do you treat adults? Because they realize they've got the same thing their child has.